To find the world's biggest fish, I dived at 3 sites across the Philippines to see them up close.
It's just amazing na like they're so big yet they're so gentle.
But not all whale shark encounters are the same.
Nag-boom yung internet, din doon na nag-trending yung whale shark watching.
Sikat siya sa buong mundo. Yung whale shark is pinapakain para po makita sa mga tao.
It is actually illegal to be feeding protected species here in the Philippines.
We take care of our whale sharks by implementing our rules and regulations po.
In an ideal world, we don't want to disturb the animals we're interacting with, right?
So you need to somehow take a stand.
Yes, po. Yes, po.
Hindi pwedeng in the middle ka.
Join me as we investigate what makes this animal so enchanting and why people are concerned about the current state of our beloved whale sharks. On a good day, I consider myself pretty lucky to be born here. It's a relatively small country, but having more than 7,000 islands does something to the life it hosts. Across these islands, unique species have evolved, making the Philippines a biodiversity hotspot, one of only 18 megadiverse countries that make up 2/3 of the world's species. Many of our terrestrial animals, roughly half of them, can only be found here, endemic. But what I think really sets us apart, and what ultimately got me into wildlife filmmaking, is the water. Here I feel more connected, at home, as we Filipinos are in a sense nurtured by the sea. It's through freediving that I've understood what biodiversity really means. As a country in the heart of the Coral Triangle, sometimes even called the center of marine biodiversity, I've made it my mission to inspire others to come and see the life that surrounds us. Suffice to say, we are blessed, but being given that much also takes responsibility. That mission has brought me to Donsol, a third-class municipality in the southern part of Luzon, in search for an animal that has become a symbol of our fascination and love for the ocean. An animal so big and so beautiful that it draws people from halfway across the globe. The whale shark. We are in the whale shark capital of the world, and today we'll be meeting some of the people who are helping keep that title for Donsol. Here, I met MJ from the Worldwide Fund for Nature, or WWF, the organization that helped pioneer whale shark watching. And here, they work closely alongside Butanding interaction officers.
Mula tourism, responsibilidad, kami na po lahat hanggang sa boat, hanggang makauwi, lahat po sa amin nakasalalay.
On a slightly gloomy Sunday morning, we hopped on a tourist boat with Sir Jun, hoping to find the biggest fish in the world.
Aaminin ko po sir sa inyo, first time ko makakita ng whale shark. Well-trained na po kami. Natakot din po ako.
Ba't ka pa natakot dun sa...
First time malaki
Easily, hours go by as we anxiously wait for the spotter to signal for sharks.
Whale shark is a wild animal, kaya pagdating namin sa boat, kahit marami po yung sightings, hindi po rin po kami nagbibigay ng garantiya kasi kagaya po ng Mayon Volcano, hindi po siya gumagalaw because this is nature. Pwede mo po siyang hindi makita. Pero po, ginagawa naman po namin ang lahat para makakita kasi yun po talagang pinunta nila rito.
Once the spotter signals for a shark sighting, everybody gets ready to jump from the boat. When we got to the area, the Butanding already swam down, away from the boats and humans.
Yung pinakamahirap sa BIO kasi parang nasa gitna siya ng boatman tsaka ng tourist, yung guide, na kung pwede lang i-extend ko yung oras para sa guest. Kaso baka magalit naman ng boatman kasi yung krudo nila nagkokonsumo na medyo mahal.
They don't guarantee the sightings, right? So is that okay with you taking the risk if you don't see one today?
Yeah, we're just coming for 2 days in a row. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be.
Okay. So why did you pick Donsol to find the whale sharks?
So we wanted to pick somewhere where there wasn't feeding and make sure it was like an ethical way of seeing the whale sharks. Just reading different blogs, found out about Donsol and figured that was the best approach.
Okay, so you did your research.
Yes.
When we're talking about wildlife, we would want these animals, for example, to exhibit natural behavior and to be an active actor to that ecosystem. And somehow, if we interfere kasi, that changes.
So a few years back, I actually already saw the whale sharks, but not here. It was in Oslob. And it was a little bit conflicting with what I set out to do. Because in Oslob, there's this guarantee that you'll be able to see these gentle giants. But with everything, there's always a cost. Oslob is in the southern part of Cebu, a place that really put the Philippines on the map when it comes to whale shark tourism. But many scientists and conservationists, including Dr. AA, are concerned with the practice of luring in whale sharks by means of feeding them.
Studies have shown that feeding, or what we call provisioning, of wildlife is actually not good for the wildlife itself. It changes their behavior, and studies have also shown that feeding will actually make them stay on the surface longer than they would usually do. So may changes in their physiology. If we change their behavior or change their migration patterns, pwedeng may long-term effects nga yun in their reproduction. So may implication yun to the population.
Now the question is, without the act of feeding them, will we actually be able to find them here, out in the wild? On that day, we rode a research boat with the people from WWF.
Hindi talaga totally yung researcher boat nakakakita kasi nagpapaubaya sila sa mga tourist boat. Kasi researcher sila, araw-araw sila nandiyan eh.
Despite the odds, we're all on the same boat for one thing: to document the whale sharks.
Ang pinaka-main work namin dito yung pagtatag ng ID or yung pag-ID mismo ng whale shark. Gaya sa tao, may mga unique tayong fingerprint. Sa whale shark naman, yung sa left pectoral fins niya yung mga unique.
Tracking and identifying whale sharks through their patterns is one of the ways their populations are estimated. It also gives us a glimpse into their behavior, migration patterns, and their health.
Na nakaka-inlove siya kasi every time you jump and you encounter, it feels like it's your first time seeing them. And it's just amazing na like they're so big yet they're so gentle.
I learned so much about whale sharks while sailing with WWF. I also found out that the word butanding came from this region. But it wasn't the most endearing name for the whale sharks.
Perwisyo siya dito daw sa Donsol.
Kaya lang, ginagawa nilang perwisyo kasi hindi naman mapapakinabangan eh. Hindi naman pwedeng kainin dito. Pag dinaanan na yung lambat ng mga mangingisda, butas yan, wasak yan lahat. Kaya perwisyo ang tingin nila sa, lalo na yung mga mangingisda.
In the local dialect of the Bicol region, buta means blind, as fishermen would often see these giants bump into boats, while pating means shark. Together, butanding roughly means blind shark.
Dati kinakatututan tong whale shark dahil sobrang ang laking isda, and then parang sa sobrang laki yung bunganga, parang kakainin ka na raw sa sobrang laki. And then yung na-discover ni Karina Escudero na ganun pala, sobrang bait ng isda, and then talagang pag lumalangoy ka, nakikisabay sila, yun, kaya naging tourist spot tong Donsol.
We've come a long way from treating them as pests. Now, people travel thousands of miles just for a chance to see them.
It was my childhood dream to see a whale shark, and then finally, when I came to Donsol the first time, I finally saw it, and that was really amazing. But actually, all of them, they have been magical.
After hours, the spotter quickly directs our boat towards the nearest whale shark sighting. But on a busy day like this, when many tourists are around, the whale sharks seem to shy away very quickly.
Okay, so far it's been 2 hours. We've had 2 false alarms so far, but still hoping we can find a whale shark today.
Every time the boat shifts gear, the crew instantly goes into battle mode, ready to jump anytime. It was a truly memorable, unforgettable experience. But it also left me with questions. Questions that can only be answered by going back to the place where this story started.
So here in Oslob, this is where all the action happens. So I think this is the briefing area where the tour guides give you the information, what to do, what not to do during the whale shark activity. And everyone is here for one thing only, and that's for the putanding. So they start here at around 5:30. The boats start rolling in.
Early in the morning, these small feeder boats would start paddling a few hundred meters away from shore. And when the whale sharks appear, they start to feed them to keep them at bay. Then, the slightly bigger tourist boats start bringing in the tourists close to the feeding zone.
And if I'm not mistaken, they do this until around lunchtime.
I'm very excited about that. It's something I want to do. Never done it before, so.
So what do you know about the whale sharks here in Oslob so far?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So you're just excited to see them?
Yeah, just to see them, kind of, I guess, get a new experience in life and go from there.
This is a highly optimized operation, something only Oslob can execute. Because the interaction is guaranteed, it can be packaged with other attractions and offered as part of a complete tourist experience.
Parang nung bata kasi kami, hindi namin experience to. So, parang binibigay namin sa kanya yung experience na hindi namin na nung bata kami. So, yun, para mas, wala siyang babalik, walang regret, ganun.
Sikat siya sa buong mundo. Yung whale shark is pinapakain para po makita sa mga tao. Pinapakain siya para pumunta siya sa surface. At the same time, hindi mahirapan yung mga tao sa pag-interact sa kanila.
A few minutes away from the whale shark briefing area, we met Kuya Nev.
We expand our income. I mean, yung diskarte namin ba? Inano namin, nag-extra.
Nag-extra?
Yeah, nag-extra.
Extra hard work.
So before, we are just in the market. May kahirapan before. Tapos ngayon, naging okay naman. Maginhawa. Parang parang mas naging okay yung lifestyle namin ngayon kaysa nung una.
It is really important because nagbibigay ito ng opportunity hindi lang sa amin kundi sa mga ibang locals din sa iba-ibang lugar dito sa Cebu, especially yung mga guide din, yung mga drivers, yung mga business owners po. Pag maraming guests dito pupunta sa Tanawan po, marami ding guests na bumibili sa mga local products namin dito. Hindi lang dito, kundi sa ibang lugar din, ibang lungsod din sa Cebu. Hindi naman talaga araw-araw na the same whale shark as yesterday. Kasi migratory animals sila, so we have some sharks that come back here sa spot after a day or after a week, after a month. So every day, iba-iba yung whale shark po dito. So I think kung sa tao lang, parang nakiki 7-Eleven lang to sila sa atin. After nila dito sa Tanawan po, umaalis naman sila dito sa spot. They can be spotted doon sa Negros or doon sa ibang side ng Cebu, sa Malboal. So you don't really think na it can really affect their migratory path po. Kasi as I've said, migratory animals na sila, so dumadaan na sila dito sa part ng dagat.
So Oslob is a migratory corridor for whale sharks. So a lot of whale sharks pass through there. It's not even a feeding aggregation site for whale sharks, like what Donsol is. So whale sharks should not be hanging around the Oslob area. They should just be passing through that area. But because of the feeding, there has been some change in behavior and they started to stay instead of leave.
After speaking with Dr. AA, one of the Philippines' leading marine conservationists, especially in the areas of conservation policy and shark protection, he recommended that I reach out to another scientist, a name I kept seeing in many of these research papers about the Oslob whale sharks.
I was probably in Oslob for, I think, 8 to 9 years doing research there. So we knew the whale sharks. We were in the water every single day. Like when I started, I was probably in the water every day for the first 3 months, every day for 2-3 hours. So I knew the whale sharks pretty well. So Oslob it was, at the time when it started, a globally unique place because it was the only known site where people could feed sharks to facilitate interactions with these animals. And by feeding them locally caught uyap, small shrimps at the time, they could kind of make that interaction more predictable. And this started in 2011. There was a Korean diver called Shin Jin who ran a dive shop in Tanawan. And he first saw this interaction between the fishers and the whale sharks, that they could move the whale sharks away from their fishing gear. It was early on, before it became a tourism thing. And Shin Jin saw this, so he asked the fishermen, can you lure the whale shark in front of my resort because it's right on the beach in Tanawan. And the fishermen did. They lured this whale shark there, and I guess he paid them some money, and he took his divers right off the beach. And that's how the Oslob situation started. Within the space of a year, that went from, Shinjin with his group of divers to thousands of tourists lining up per day, going out to see this whale shark.
So after 2011, nag-boom yung tourism dito. Most of the locals na nag-guide na, most of them are having their own business na. And dito sa mga local dito, yung mga fishermen noon naging tourist guide na, naging community guide na sa whale shark watching dito sa Tanawan.
Whale sharks are very, very good at finding food. It's their primary drive, especially juveniles. They need to get big quicker or quickly. And what we're seeing in Oslob is whale sharks will capitalize on any food bloom that is better than the current option. And this is the same anywhere in the world. They've evolved over millions of years to be these very, very precise predators for these plankton blooms, which in the tropics, like the Philippines, these blooms are sporadic. They go poof over here, disappear, poof over here, disappear. So when you take it to the Oslob context, where you have a predictable food source, you can see why the whale shark will then return and return and return, because they've been pre-programmed to do exactly that. So what Oslob has done in a sense is harness that nature of the whale shark and be like, well, I'm gonna feed you every day, so you're gonna come back every day.
We implement these rules for your safety and for the protection of the whale sharks. First and the most important rule is you are not allowed to touch the whale sharks because they are considered as wild creatures, so they may react violently or may swim away, leading to a shorter interaction. Second is no flash photography.
I've been here 3 years ago, and I have seen many instances where people bump into sharks. But let's see what changed and if the interactions have improved since then.
In terms of showing the impacts of provisioning on the whale sharks themselves is extended residency. So whale sharks typically aggregate around the world for 30 days a year. And in Oslob, we have some individual animals that are there year-round. So we have this change in behavior and extended residency as a consequence of this predictable food source. We showed through using specific temperature loggers attached to the whale sharks, we showed that they have an increase in metabolic rate because they're spending too much time in warm water. So, and that warm water is because they're very close to shore. If you were to move the whale sharks 100 meters further offshore, you don't get that coastal warmer water. It's a lot cooler. Oslob became famous for this vertical feeding behavior. So the whale sharks go vertical and they're stationary next to a feeding boat and they spend maybe many hours of the day vertically feeding. They do this behavior naturally around the world, they vertical feed, but it looks very passive. So when anyone would see it, be like, oh, this is like a very cost-effective way of feeding for the whale shark. It turns out it is not. So to maintain a vertical position, they actually need to use their tail quite a lot and their pectoral fins for maneuvering. So when we use three-dimensional tags, so multi-sensory tags on the dorsal fins, we were able to calculate this. And we showed that actually vertical feeding takes a lot of energy. So it's a compromise of how much do I feed the whale sharks versus if I feed too little, it might be not cost effective for those individual whale sharks. I used to live there, right? So you can't go and say, don't do what you're doing because it's not gonna get you anywhere. So for me, it was always trying to get some sort of compromise. The feeding was going on anyway, right? In the meantime, we have all these things that could be so easily improved to reduce the stress on the individual whale sharks. And that was my personal goal beyond whoever I worked with.
If I had to guess, these whale sharks are still juveniles based on their size. Although they are still the same beautiful whale sharks, I can't help but think how different the experience was without needing to search for them. And it definitely doesn't help knowing how feeding affects them, but maybe there are solutions. I wanted to know what's being done to protect them. After the tour, we went to Oslob's tourism office hoping to get a statement. We had also emailed them to request an interview, but they declined, which I understand. This isn't some underground issue and they've been the subject of discussion and debate for many years already. But what does the law really say about protecting whale sharks?
Yung whale shark was a special case in the Philippines because the protection stemmed out of a study on the fishery of whale sharks in the Philippines around the Bohol Sea back in 1996 and 1997. So the study showed that there has been a decline in whale shark population in the Bohol Sea kasi nga there's a community there that is fishing them. And initially, it was being utilized for food as meat. They dry the meat. At some point, we were already exporting the fresh meat of the whale shark to Taiwan. So it was really getting bad for the whale sharks. But the Philippine government decided to ban the fishery. Together with the manta ray, was the first time any shark or ray was listed as protected in the Philippines.
Last November 2025, whale sharks were added to CITES Appendix 1, the highest level of protection under the convention across more than 180 countries, including the Philippines.
It is our national pride.
So under both international and national policy, it's illegal to hunt, eat, and trade these animals. But these don't really prevent people from feeding whale sharks.
If we can improve the physiology of these whale sharks that are currently subjected to this, that's, for me, it was a win. It's just there are bigger processes at play, including some of the national legislation that came out, especially in 2020, that essentially says feeding is prohibited.
So through the Department of Tourism, the Philippines came out with some regulations on how to conduct what we call marine wildlife tourism interactions. And this would include the whale sharks. So it's explicit in that regulation that there should not be feeding of any marine wildlife. So it is actually illegal to be feeding protected species here in the Philippines in their natural habitat.
So Oslob all of a sudden was, ostracized. Whatever they're doing is no longer, we think this is bad. It doesn't really matter because there's national legislation saying you shouldn't be doing it.
So the reason why it's really hard for me to make this film is I have this lens of tourism wherein I started my filmmaking journey with travel. I was able to experience the beauty of this country by traveling, and that's why I have a soft spot for the people who work in this industry, people who just genuinely want to make you happy. It's also clearly an important part of our economy. Oslob generates millions of pesos annually from the whale shark watching activity alone.
So remove any ethical or legal implications of feeding the whale sharks for a minute. What you have is a coastal community that was fairly poor, that depended on fishing, and all of a sudden you have this opportunity where, hang on a minute, I can fish at night, feed these whale sharks in the morning, and then I'm making 2,000 pesos a day. That is like when you used to earn 100, 200 pesos a day. This is exponential. So I think it's important to take that local context into consideration as well. Can I make a living from something that is somewhat related to what I used to do, so I'm not changing my identity entirely?
But The challenge is, where do we draw the line between tourism and exploitation?
Pero classic naman yun, di ba? Like at what price, di ba? Mga short-term gain for money or what we're calling sustainability nga, which will be a longer process probably.
Pag nawawala yung whale shark, siguro marami talaga maapektuhan. Hindi lang kami, kundi yung mga local sa ibang lugar. Kasi wala na silang pupuntahan dito sa Tanawan. Kasi ito lang yung livelihood natin. So probably, siguro yung iba, balik na naman sa pangingisda. Yung iba, aalis na sa ibang lugar para maghanap ng ibang trabaho, gano'n. So hopefully, hindi yan mangyari. So, pero all in all, marami talaga maapektuhan.
But one thing's for sure, Oslob, the boatmen, this whole community, they are the key beneficiaries of the blessings brought out by the whale shark, which also puts them in a position to steward their natural resources.
If you cannot prove to me that what you're doing has no harmful effect to the animal, then you shouldn't be doing it.
A lot of people still choose yung easy way of encountering whale shark. Hindi nila naiintindihan na they are a wild animal. Parang lang yan parang tao lang yan pag kinulong mo, 'di ba, parang meaningless yung buhay nila.
There's still much to learn about them, but I think it's very important that people know that we should protect them because they're an endangered species, so that they should be handled with care.
There's a better way to do it, as demonstrated by the other sites.
But the more I learned, the more I realized that this wasn't just a story about whale sharks or a comparison between Oslob and Donsol. It's a story about a problem that goes beyond these waters. I make one final dive, not into the waters of Oslob or Donsol, but into a community navigating a difficult choice.
I'd like to translate my advocacy in sustainable marine tourism or conservation tourism into tangible benefit, especially to the communities, to the local government, and even to the private sector, get a fair share of the benefits from tourism.
Pintuyan is in the southern Leyte, and in this world dominated by social media and oversaturated travel experiences, it's rare to find a place that's still truly underrated.
It doesn't mean that the destination is already prepared. It wants to be known for its natural resources, its cultural resources. So tourism is a very good tool. If it's done correctly and managed properly, it can be a tool for poverty alleviation. And it will answer mostly all the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals.
Now, this trip to Pintuyan is more than just about finding whale sharks. It's about helping out the local economy by establishing a tourism model to elevate the lives of the locals. An ambitious project to bring this place a little bit closer to Oslob or Donsol.
Hindi ko makalimutan yung experience na may spotter kaming kasama, tapos nag-aabang lang kami ng whale shark. Tapos nung sinabi niya na, uy, nandiyan na yung whale. Sabi niya, jump! parang hindi ko maintindihan yung gagawin ko. I was scared, I was excited at the same time.
On this campaign, we are graced with the presence and support from Beatriz Gomez, Filipina supermodel from the same island of Oslob. In Pintuyan, Bea got to see her first whale shark, and here, they call them tiki-tiki.
So, sobrang unique niya for me na ikaw yung lalapit sa kanila because there are some whale shark experience na, especially the one in my hometown in Cebu, where you don't get to have that natural interaction with the whale sharks.
Sometime in 2019, it started in Lila, Bohol, one of the coastal areas in the southern part. So it's Tagbilaran, Baclayon, Albor, Luway, Lila. And they, of course, they followed the way of the Oslob whale watching, and they do the feeding.
Another prominent island in the face of Philippine tourism was challenged in their ways towards whale shark watching. But things changed when the local government decided to stop all whale shark feeding activities. And Attorney Esther was one of the leading advocates who worked to make that ban a reality.
There were attempts to use emotions. What will happen to the employment of the people? But my argument on that is that what was their work before the whale watching operations? They live on income of whatever they did before the whale watching operations. They're just getting used already to the millions makuno na. It's a millions tourism business.
Based on available data, this is how much Donsol and Pintuyan earned from their seasonal whale shark activities compared to a year-long guaranteed encounter in Oslob.
Filipinos are so good in making laws but so bad in the implementation.
Pero currently, di ba, meron ng parang circular sa DOT stating na bawal yung feeding.
Yeah.
So, hindi pa siya enough.
Hindi enough kasi it's just a DOT circular but there's no punitive
So parang wala pong punishment kumbaga.
Walang teeth ang and I have yet to see political will from the DOT people to enforce that.
In an ideal world, we don't want to disturb the animals we're interacting with, right? We want to always minimize our impact. That's why if you're working with wildlife, make sure you have some good science because science can help you understand what your impact is.
If they want the whale sharks to stay there and to keep on attracting tourists, they have to take care of the environment.
This town, Pintuyan, may be the smallest among the three in terms of income generated from the whale sharks. But you can see and feel how thankful they are for the presence of these beautiful sharks.
Sustainable marine tourism depends on so many factors, among them governance. It could be the ecological circumstances of a particular destination, or it could be the community, the dynamics of a community. So these are challenges one has to address when you implement sustainable marine tourism or community-based tourism.
In my search for whale sharks and many other wild animals, I've come to the conclusion that we humans are constantly faced with a difficult choice: to conserve wildlife or to profit from them.
It has been demonstrated that there are alternative, better practices that actually work.
As I leave the boat one last time and dive towards the whale sharks, I ask myself, can tourism truly be sustainable? Can this small town rise to the occasion and still choose sustainability over the temptation to focus on the money? Can we have truly organic and beautiful wildlife encounters without causing them harm?
Yung pangangalaga namin sa whale shark, parang katimbang na ng buhay namin yon.
No matter who it is or what animal is that, you have to respect them.
Malaking advantage para sa akin itong trabaho na to kasi nakatulong ako hindi lang sa aking sarili kundi sa aking kapatid at sa aking pamilya din.
These are all stories shaped by the whale sharks. They come from different islands and different backgrounds. They even call the whale sharks by different names.
Nature surrounds us and we affect nature in so many different ways. So we need to find that balance talaga. Even if it's so abstract right now, I think we should strive to achieve it.
Filipinos are bestowed with incredible resources that really come from the heavens. But to whom much is given, much is also required.